Welcome to another episode of I wrote the initial script for this video years ago and I'm only now getting around to recording it. Anyway, Dragon Ball Z adapts 60% of the original manga run and is infamously how most people think the story starts due to how ingrained the Z material is in pop culture thanks to the success of the various international broadcasts of the Z anime. This has unfortunately caused some misconceptions throughout the years regarding characters like Bulma, Krillin, and Tenshinhan since they aren't as relevant in Z due to Toriyama's tendency to introduce new elements for Goku to play off of and heavily shake things up in each arc. While Dragon Ball Z still kicks ass, it's a series very much strengthened by having experiencing the original Dragon Ball first. I mean, it is a continuation after all. So let's start the Z journey by delving into one of the most popular arcs in all of anime and manga, the Saiyan arc. This storyline starts after a time skip where Goku and Chi-Chi got married and had a kid, named Gohan. After the core cast of Dragon Ball reunite, a warrior from space shows up to challenge Goku, Raditz, Goku's brother, though that fact isn't really important to the story. What is important is learning Goku's origins as a member of the Saiyans, a monkey warrior race from space. The Dragon Ball series was getting more action-packed by the day, with arcs like the King Piccolo and 23rd Budokai, but this development takes the series from a new level from grounded martial arts to space shenanigans. This would be a jump-the-shark moment for any other series, but luckily Toriyama's improv writing style was expected from his readers, and the anime rebranding itself to Z at the start of this arc definitely helped ease the transition for viewers at home. So Goku teams up with Piccolo to take down Raditz, though it costs Goku his own life, and on top of that, more Saiyans are coming, so the remaining fighters need to prepare. Even Goku prepares some new techniques in the afterlife, like the Kaioken and Spirit Bomb. Some of my favorite parts of the training time before the other two Saiyans come to Earth are the segments with Piccolo and Gohan. Now, when I talked about the Piccolo Jr. arc in my last video, I didn't really delve into Piccolo as a character. However, the Saiyan arc does wonders for his characterization to make him an iconic part of the series, and probably help the character become a favorite of Toriyama's. Piccolo starts off reluctantly teaming up with Goku and only taking Gohan in for training out of pity, but through his unorthodox training methods, he learns to care for the boy and others, which causes him to sacrifice himself for Gohan later on. Dragon Ball is no stranger to redemption arcs like with Tenshinhan, but this is one of the best uses of that story format in the series. As for the Saiyans coming to Earth, Nappa and Vegeta, they're pretty threatening yet entertaining baddies in this arc. Though, remember how I said Dragon Ball doesn't usually stick with its non-Goku characters for more than one arc? Well, there is an exception, and that exception is Vegeta, who became so popular with readers and viewers through his egotistical boasting and rivalry with Goku that he stuck around as an anti-hero in nearly every Dragon Ball arc since this one. One of the biggest climactic moments in this arc is when Vegeta becomes a giant monkey like Goku, where we get the bittersweet realization that Goku accidentally caused the death of his grandpa through his uncontrollable monkey form, and Goku's resolve to keep moving forward despite this depressing realization is a prime example of why Z doesn't hit as hard unless you've read the original Dragon Ball, with Goku cherishing his grandpa's memories in that one sad fight. Honestly, might be my favorite stuff in the Saiyan arc outside of the expertly laid out action panels that captured the imagination of a generation. The Saiyan arc perfectly leads into the Frieza arc with Krillin and Gohan going to space to hunt down the Dragon Balls in order to revive everyone Nappa and Vegeta killed, with Goku coming in later after he's healed up from the events of the last saga. However, getting the MacGuffins won't be so easy as the space tyrant Frieza and his various goons are also looking out for them. The Frieza arc doubles down on the stuff people liked from the last arc, as we explore more space stuff. There's a lot more intense fighting, Vegeta gets to do a lot as he rebels against Frieza, though there's still wacky new characters to go around like Zarbon and the Ginyu Force. The latter of which I highly appreciate as a Tokusatsu fan. In fact, the Ginyus were added because Toriyama's kid loves Super Sentai, which is both based and wholesome as heck. You'll also have some of the most iconic and world-famous parts of the entire Dragon Ball franchise here, like the first appearance of Goku's Super Saiyan form and Frieza's infamous 5 minutes of destruction. Though, to be honest, while those are really fun, it did make writing notes and analyzing these last two arcs tricky. Like, nearly everyone on the internet watching this knows what happens in the Saiyan and Frieza arcs for how widespread and world famous they are. Even if you never read a page of Dragon Ball or seen a minute of the show, you know a lot of the famous moments here. That didn't make it any less enjoyable to go through these arcs. The cat and mouse games Krillin and Gohan play with Vegeta are quite entertaining, and is arguably the last time Krillin's going to be effective in a fight all series, so I cherished those moments while I could. And Frieza's a great devious villain, though the various vocal adaptations of the character through animation in video games have made him better in my eyes, as the writing for him in the manga is still good, but the character hits different when you hear a great vocal rendition of him by a talented voice actor. I really enjoyed the Frieza arc, but by the time I finished it, I came to a realization about my opinions on the Dragon Ball Z material. Dragon Ball Z may be more consistently good than the original Dragon Ball stuff, but doesn't quite reach the high highs of the original series, especially from a thematic level. I just found that thought interesting, and a good segue to talk about my favorite saga of Dragon Ball Z, the Cell arc. The Cell arc is very different compared to its contemporaries in Z, as it takes a while to establish a status quo or main villain, but I really like that, as it provides a variety of antagonists for heroes to go up against throughout its runtime, which means things are constantly being shaken up and challenged. You got Robo Frieza and his dad, you got Gero, you got the androids, and you got Mr. Big Green himself, Cell. Okay, to be fair, Robo Frieza's a tutorial fight to show how cool Trunks is and establish him into the greater Dragon Ball story, but I think it works out and shows how much the threats have escalated. As for the bigger threats, Gero is cool, but I 100% get why the editors wanted a different antagonist as opposed to him, but I feel like he got the right amount of screen time to leave an impact on the story before being murked. And it helps that his successors in the android family are neat characters, as while they initially have violent tendencies, they're much more chillaxed and down to earth compared to other Dragon Ball antagonists, especially Android 16's subdued love for the natural world around him. As for the big boy Cell himself, he starts off really creepy, but quickly becomes a devilishly handsome yet magnificent bastard when he starts getting upgrades. Cell is quite literally a culmination of everything Goku has fought to this point, even having DNA from past antagonists like Piccolo and Frieza, power he did not earn, simply stole or inherited from others as opposed to the intense training our heroes did to win. Circling back to those heroes, Trunks is one of my favorite Dragon Ball characters. Not only does he have some of the coolest moves in the series, but he's also an angsty teen trying to prove himself among his heroes, which I think anyone at any age or in any profession can relate to in some way. Though with how Trunks is set up in this arc at the beginning, I think it would have been best to have him finish off Cell at the end rather than Gohan. Don't get me wrong, Gohan is great in the Cell arc. I love his Super Saiyan 2 transformation sequence and his father-son Kamehameha, but he's kind of thrown into the plot when Goku has to start training, where Trunks has connections and incites the plot from the get-go. I think Trunks could have still lost against Cell like he did, but then learned his lesson and come back stronger, maybe even team up with Gohan. Just a random thought I had, and honestly doesn't affect my enjoyment of the arc too much, just a neat little what could have been on my end. I mean, Dragon Ball What If videos are a cottage industry on YouTube within itself. Besides, Trunks gets closure anyways, he liberates his timeline at the end of the arc, so it's fine. Now it's time for the final saga of Dragon Ball Z, the Majin Buu arc. A lot of people are mixed on this arc, and yeah, it has its flaws, but the stuff it does well, it does really well. Like, Gohan's early turn as the Great Saiyaman does wonders to build a charming look at his post-Cell characterization. However, by the time it came to introduce the big pink cheese himself, Toriyama decided to give the protagonist chair back to Goku, feeling Gohan wasn't suited for the new hero of Earth. While this was disappointing for a lot of fans, especially with all that fun Saiyaman stuff building up Gohan earlier, I do like how the switch is done. Goku enjoying Earth on an off day from heaven, but now must returning to become Earth's protector is just so Goku. As for Majin Buu himself, I quite like both versions of him. He manages to be a funny yet terrifying threat, to the point where he even manages to destroy nearly everyone on Earth at one point. We've seen devilishly evil characters in Dragon Ball before, but none of them have quite balanced comedy and world-ending stakes quite like Buu. However, this does bring up one of my problems with the arc, the scaling of conflict. Outside of the people who released Buu, Buu is the only threat our heroes have to face, and I don't quite like that, mainly because, as per the unwritten rule of most shonen storytelling, the main character always has to beat the main boss. So with Buu being a singular major threat with no mini-bosses in between, the other characters can't shine against him because Goku has to defeat him, which is why many people were unhappy of how fusions and power-ups didn't do shit in this arc. If there were other villains in this arc that the sidecast could have fought instead or before Buu, then maybe people would be happier with how they were treated here, but because Buu is the only villain and has to keep beating everyone, the middle of the saga is padded out by pointless spectacle fights. I enjoy quite a bit about the Buu saga, but I think the flaws were a good sign that it was time to wrap things up, which leads us to the final chapter. I love this ending a lot. It's great to see Goku train someone from the next generation, and how his adventure isn't gonna stop just because the manga's over. Also, doing said chapter at a Budokai tournament is a great way to tie everything back to the beginnings of Dragon Ball. And that's Dragon Ball Z! I wish there was some groundbreaking or grand thesis I can make about this iconic series, but sometimes a cool popular thing for many years is a cool popular thing for many years, and I just want to talk a bit about it. At this point, most of Dragon Ball speaks for itself, with its charming characters, strong moral lessons on fitness discipline, and of course, all the cool power-ups and action you can ask for. And that concludes another episode of I Keep Forgetting to Record Finished Scripts. Thank you all for watching. If you want me to cover GT, Super, or Daima, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you later.